The Bible tells us here in Job chapter 14, we're going to read verses 1 through 14. Job chapter 14, verses 1 through 14. And then we're going to look at Matthew chapter 11, verse 12. Matthew 11, verse 12. Now, before we get into Job 14, let me just introduce you to some things as I've already had concerning Job. The Bible talks about in Job chapter 1 that Job was an upright man, one that eschewed evil. In other words, he didn't, amen, there was no evil found within Job, amen. He shunned from it. And it begins to tell us how wealthy of an individual that Job was. And it begins to give us the total sum or the substance of all that he had. But then we recognize something in chapter 3, verse 25, where Job makes this proclamation, and it lets us have some insight on why this is happening to Job. And the Bible tells us that Job said, "The thing that I have feared the most has come upon me, and the thing that I was afraid has came to me." The thing that I feared the most has come upon me, is happening. And the thing that I was afraid is already here. We also see a dialogue between the Lord and Satan as Satan is going to and fro throughout the earth, looking for whom he can devour. And God stops him and asks him a question. "What are you doing?" He said, "Just going to and fro, doing what I do, messing up folk lives." And God said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Have you thought about Job? He said, "I thought about him a lot of times, but you've got a hedge that you put around him, and I can't get to him. It's not that I have not thought about him, but you've got a hedge of your protection around him. But if you take your hedge of protection away from him, I'll show you just how much Job really loves you." And God says, "All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove my hedge of protection." He says, "You can touch his life, but you can't take it. You can take what he has, you can do what you want to his body, but you cannot have his life." And so Satan says, "I guarantee you that if you let me to him, I'll get him to renounce you." And so therefore Satan goes and he does what he does, and what he does, he do best. Amen. And we all know that he does what he do, and he does it best. Amen. And so we see now that Job is in a place in his life where his body has been attacked, his household has been attacked, his children has been attacked. Amen. He's lost his children. He's lost, amen, his health. And the only thing that seems to appear to be alive in his life is his wife. And the thing that's alive in his life is telling him to go ahead and take his life. Isn't that something? The only thing alive in your life is telling you to take your life. And so we see in chapter 14, there's a dialogue here of Job where he has gone through so much and he has lost so much that he comes to the place where he's just, really don't even want to live no more. And this is where we are in chapter 14, verses 1 through 14. And Job is saying this through his philosophizing concerning a man and his hereafter. He says, "Man that is born of a woman is of a few days and full of trouble. He cometh forth like a flower and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow and continueth not. And doest thou open thy eyes upon such a one, and bringeth me into judgment with thee? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? Not one. Seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. Turn from him that he may rest till he shall accomplish as an hireling his day. For there is hope of a tree if it be cut down, that it will sprout again, and the tender branches thereof will not cease. Though the roots thereof wax old in the earth, and the stocks thereof die in the ground, yet through the scent of water it will bud, and bring forth brought like a plant. But man dieth and wasteth away, yea, man even give up the ghost. And where is he? As the waters fall from the earth, and the floods decay and drieth up, so man lieth down and riseth not, till the heavens be no more. They shall not awake, nor be raised out of their sleep. Oh, that thou wouldest hide me in the grave, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past, that thou wouldest appoint me a set time, and remember me. If a man die, shall he live again? All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change comes. Job says, all the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. I want to use as a topic or a title to our message today, it's time for a change. It's time for a change. The Bible tells us in Matthew chapter 11 verse 12, where Jesus is speaking to his disciples concerning John the Baptist, who is in jail about to be beheaded. And he says this, and from the days of John the Baptist until now, somebody say now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. From the days of John the Baptist until right now, the kingdom of heaven have suffered violence. But those that were violently, amen, attacked, took it, became violent, and took it by force. Job says, all the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. I want you to know it's time for your change. It's time for your change. Here we see that in the book of Job, that the book of Job is not a book that enlightens us about, amen, too much about God and the revelation of God, but it is a book that informs us about what God is able to do for us while we're going through the things that we go through in life. Amen. It is not a book that reveals to us God's prophetic revelation of his word, but yet it does reveal to us, amen, on how we are to trust God and depend upon God while we're going through. It is not a book that declares the promises of God to the believer, but it is a book, amen, that shows the believer receiving the promises and the blessings of God if they just stick things out. Amen. If you can just stick it out. Job was saying, I'm going to wait till my change come. No matter what's coming against me, I'm going to stick it out until God comes in and changes what's going on in my life. When we look at that word change, because we're talking about, amen, we're focusing on it's time for a change. How many of you know that it's time for a change in your life? A time for a change, amen, in your walk. A time for a change in your commitment. It's time for a change in your life. And when we look at that word change, it simply means to take something away and put something else in its place. Amen. To change or even to exchange something. It's time to now do away with the old and bring something new into your life. It's time to stop doing the same old thing and start doing a new thing. Why? Because it's time for a change. It's time for a change. One of the hardest things I know that people, amen, have doing, and that is changing things. And not so much changing things, but changing yourself. Changing your routine, changing from the person you are and becoming the person that God is calling for you to be. How many of you know it's time for a change? And see, the thing about this is that Job began to declare as well as to decree what time it was in his life. When we talk about decreeing, amen, and declaring what time it is, to declare something simply means that you have to openly announce what you want to say or what you're going to do. To openly say what you want to do, you declare it. But to decree it says this, to say when it's going to happen. It's one thing to say what's going to happen, but it's another thing to decree and say when it's going to happen. Somebody say now. It's time for a change now. It's time that you change your old ways and get some new ways. It's time that you change your old way of thinking and start thinking in a new way. And it's time to change now. Don't wait for tomorrow to make your change, but do your change. Job said, I'm going to wait till my change comes. I'm going to stick it out. Whatever comes my way, I'm going to make my way through it until my change comes. See, the thing about going through trials and tribulations in life, amen, is that they don't stop when you decide to give in or to give up. Trials and tribulations don't say, they don't hear you say, look, I give up, I quit. No, they're going to keep on coming. So they don't stop just because, amen, you say that you're going to give in or decide to give up. Amen. But they're over the moment you decide, I'm not quitting. I'm not giving up. Is when the enemy can see that he cannot defeat you, but he can still hurt you, but he cannot defeat you. We see that Job was hurt, but he was never defeated. Sometimes your hurt may make you think or feel like you've been defeated, but never get, amen, your hurt, amen, misunderstood with your defeat, because we are undefeatable. We cannot be defeated because Jesus has already defeated our enemy. So even though our enemy may hurt us, but he cannot defeat us. Job said, listen, he might be hurting my life, but he cannot take my life. So I'm going to wait here. I'm going to stick it out until my change. Somebody say my change. See, we look for everybody else to change, but what about you changing? That was just because Job was a man that had experienced a lot of difficulties in his life. But even though even through the difficult times, amen, he realized that something's got to change. It can't be bad always. I can't be going through all the time. Come on, somebody. Amen. He realized that something's got to change if I just stay and stick it out through the process. He says, seeing that you have determined my days, therefore things cannot stay the way that they are. Because, Lord, you have, he says, appointed bounds that the enemy, cannot pass. He says, you told my enemy that he can only go so far. And if he can only go so far, that means that he can only do so much. In other words, you will only allow the enemy to do so much, amen, to us, and so much time to do it in, because you have appointed me a time before you come and bring this thing to an end. Isaiah 46:10 says that he is a God that declares the end of a thing before he even starts that thing. In other words, he declares the end of a thing before he allows that thing to even begin. In other words, before you even get in trouble, he's already told trouble, you can only last this long. Before you even get sick, he tells sickness, you can only be here for so long. He has declared your end from the beginning. And Job comes to this conclusion that if it takes the rest of my life, I'm going to wait until my change comes. In other words, if this problem is a part of the process